What if a single speech could redraw the map of global power? What if a short statement, recorded in a stadium, broadcast on live television, shared across the world, became the spark for a tectonic shift in international relations? That is exactly what happened when the American president declared, in a rally full of cheering supporters, the United States will cut off all aid to South Africa, effective immediately, and we will not be attending the upcoming G20 Leaders Summit. Instantly, the world shuddered. Markets flashed red. Diplomatic cables went into overdrive. African capitals convened emergency sessions. Leaders across the globe paused to ask, is this permanent? Why did this matter so much? Because South Africa is not just any country. It is Africa's most industrialized economy. It is a key BRICS member. It is a strategic partner in African diplomacy. For decades, U.S. aid symbolized influence and alignment. That announcement wasn't just a policy change, it was a message. But as one superpower stepped back, another surged forward. India, under the Prime Minister, immediately offered South Africa economic, technological, and diplomatic support. India didn't hesitate. It saw not just a partner, but an opportunity to shape a new world order. On Eazicho Africa, we explore that moment in full detail. The motivations, the fallout, the reactions, and what it all means for Africa and for the world. Because this could mark the rise of a multipolar era where traditional power blocks are fading and new alliances are forming. The stakes are enormous. The tension is real, and history is being made in real time. It was a sunny afternoon in the United States, and thousands had gathered for a rally. But what followed was anything but ordinary. The American president, standing at the podium, delivered his bombshell. The U.S. was immediately cutting all aid to South Africa and would not attend the next G20 summit. The crowd roared, but beyond the cheering stood a silent global shock. That declaration wasn't fundamentally about money. For context, U.S. aid to South Africa, though meaningful, was a fraction of that country's GDP. But in geopolitics, aid equals leverage. Cutting off aid sends a potent signal. We are displeased. We withdraw our support, realign, or face isolation. At the same time, the announcement to skip the G20 was unprecedented. The G20 is the world's most important economic forum, bringing together leaders from the richest and fastest-growing economies. For the U.S. to unilaterally withdraw from that conversation raised alarm bells among global analysts. Response was immediate. In South Africa, the rand weakened, and stock markets reeled as investors digested the shock. In Washington, political commentators wondered whether this was a ploy for domestic support or the opening of a new foreign policy direction. In global media, headlines blared, U.S. abandons Africa, G20 boycott sends shockwaves. Washington withdraws from world stage. Diplomats scrambled. Emergency meetings were convened. And in Africa, political leaders debated what this meant not only for South Africa, but for the continent as a whole. It was clear to many, this was not just a U.S. South Africa issue. It was a signal to the world. To understand why the United States made such a daring move, we must unpack the strategic calculus behind it. Several overlapping motivations come into focus. Over recent years, South Africa has strengthened its partnerships with BRICS members. It has hosted BRICS summits, supported de-dollarization, and pushed for financial mechanisms that empower the bloc. From Washington's perspective, this is more than cooperation. It is a pivot away from the West. Africa's 1.4 billion people and vast natural resources place it at the center of global rivalry. By distancing itself from Pretoria, the U.S. may believe it can punish defiance, reassert dominance, or discourage other African nations from aligning too closely with BRICS. The leader thrives on bold, dramatic actions. The America First narrative depends on strong stances. Cutting aid is symbolic, an assertion that U.S. interests come first. Skipping the G20 projects strength, not cooperation. Historically, aid has served as a tool of influence. By withholding it, the U.S. signals a redefinition of the relationship, one where allegiance carries consequences. However, in executing this move, Washington created a vacuum that India was ready to fill. India did not hesitate. Within hours, New Delhi had dispatched a decisive diplomatic message. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs issued a firm, concise statement. India stands in full solidarity with South Africa, economically, diplomatically, and strategically. The Prime Minister of India placed a call to the President of South Africa, promising cooperation across multiple sectors: trade, infrastructure, energy, defense, and multilateral coordination. India offered to increase investments, support South Africa's G20 ambitions, and deepen technological and energy partnerships. India's motivations were clear: economic opportunity. Africa is a major frontier for growth. Geostrategic ambition. India aims to lead the global south. Diplomatic momentum. Supporting South Africa strengthens India's BRICS leadership. Historical ties. India and Africa share a long anti-colonial bond. By stepping in decisively, India demonstrated both solidarity and strategy. The American president's decision to skip the G20 carried profound implications. The U.S. abandoned a key platform for global economic governance. It signaled diplomatic self-isolation. It created space for rival powers like India and China. It triggered market uncertainty, affecting emerging economies worldwide. Meanwhile, India's engagement with South Africa appeared strong, stable, and forward-looking. Across Africa, the reaction was immediate. South African officials condemned the U.S. decision as coercive. Other African states defended strategic autonomy, insisting they will not bow to external pressure. An extraordinary session emphasized unity, diversification, and deeper regional integration. Across social media, Africans praised India's support. Hashtags like #AfricaHasOptions and #IndiaSupportsSA surged. Groups like SADC and BRICS-aligned African nations reaffirmed sovereignty and multipolarity. Africa was not merely responding, it was asserting itself. Economically, the crisis exposed both vulnerabilities and opportunities for South Africa. GDP over $350 billion. Strong mining and manufacturing base major trade partners including China, India, and the EU stable reserves, but sensitive to political shocks. India's proposals offered new avenues. Renewable energy investment, joint industrial parks, technology-driven collaboration, BRICS-supported infrastructure financing. Meanwhile, the U.S. risks losing strategic influence, market access, and long-term partnerships. We are witnessing a global realignment. The United States is no longer the unchallenged leader. India has positioned itself as a key power shaping the future. BRICS is evolving into a global governance alternative. Africa is rising as an independent actor in world affairs. This crisis accelerated the shift from a unipolar world to a multipolar one. Media reactions reflected global polarization. U.S. analysts debated whether this was strategic or reckless. Indian media praised the government for filling the leadership void. African outlets celebrated India's solidarity and Africa's growing agency. For Africa, this is a historic opportunity. Diversify partnerships. Assert foreign policy independence. Strengthen regional integration. Boost economic development through new alliances. Shape global institutions from within. Africa is no longer a spectator. It is a participant rewriting the rules. Looking ahead, the India-South Africa alliance could reshape global dynamics. Joint industrial zones. Energy and critical mineral partnerships. Technology exchanges. Maritime and defense cooperation. BRICS financial collaboration. G20 agenda shaping. Cultural and educational exchanges. This is not temporary. It is foundational. Avoiding new dependency. Economic volatility. Potential U.S. retaliation. Weak governance in some institutions. Conflicting national priorities. Global economic instability. How these challenges are managed will determine the long-term outcome. The G20 crisis triggered by the American president's speech was not just a diplomatic shock. It was a geopolitical earthquake. By cutting aid and boycotting the G20, the U.S. opened the door for India to step forward. India seized the moment with strategy, strength, and solidarity. Africa gained an opportunity to redefine its global role. India gained a chance to lead. And the world moved one step closer to a multipolar order. This is economies Africa, where Africa's voice shapes the global story. If you found this analysis insightful, please like, subscribe, and share. Africa is not just part of the future. Africa is shaping it. Thank you for watching. Economies Africa, your voice, your story, your Africa.